So this is your next pattern, which is a bauble. The bauble is made up of 2 straight pieces of lace joined through the fan. So you can see as I twist around, you can see a fan. You can see then stay a stitch inside that you haven't seen before, but it's got big holes in it. That's honeycomb ground, and when it's flat, it looks like honeycomb. We've then got a trail that's going to zigzag, so we've done bits of trails. This one's a continuous trail. And then inside that, the bit that you can't see, even if you look down on it because it's very tightly gathered in, is some roseground, and we've got some half rosegrounds there. So this is the strip of lace, which we need 2 of to make our finished bauble that you've just seen. So it has got some new things in it, some new features. So we've not done this type of fan before. All our fans have been backwards and forwards. This fan is a lot more difficult to tension and to get the pairs going in right. It can look like it's pulling. So we'll look at that type of fan in more detail when we come to work the various sections. We've also got a section of gaps in our lace, and this is called honeycomb. So they're like circular honeycomb gaps in the lace. So that's a new stitch. Honeycomb stitch is half stitch and an extra twist, pin, half and an extra twist. But you can see there are continuous rows, and then there's a row here that we call a gap row because there's gaps in the work. We've then got a trail, and we've done trails before, chevrons, all that sort of thing. This one perhaps is more obvious as a total zigzag rather than finishing at any point. And then we've got roseground. Our roseground, however, is slightly different because we've got some complete rosegrounds, and then we've got rosegrounds butting up against the footside. So they're almost like half roseground. So I'm going to cover those separately. We've also got a single passive in our footside edge, and that makes it a slightly different footside to the one that we had in pattern 9A. So that's the start of what's different. Let me bring in the pricking, and then you'll see something else. Okay, so this is my pricking alongside the lace. First thing to notice: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So on your pricking, I have not given you enough sections of the lace to make that complete lace. That is deliberate. So by this point, most lace makers nowadays will have a block pillow. So I'm going to show you how to use your pricking on a block pillow in terms of cutting it, sectioning it, so that you don't have to prick really long lengths of pricking, which would be unmanageable to work with anyway. This one I could have taken it that extra 2 repeats, but it was an opportunity to show you something new in the work. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to move all this off, and I'm going to do some work on the actual pricking itself. So next time you see my screen, I'll be repositioned over my table to do some work. So this was my scribbles as I was working out how I am going to work this pattern. So in terms of our 9 fans, we are going to cut this pricking, but we've got to cut it top, bottom, and in the middle. So if I start here at fan 1, I decided that one didn't actually work, although I'd put those in, and really needed a bit more to be able to join, because this lace is flat. It's joined over the back of your hand with a needle and thread when you've actually joined it, rather than joined as a lace piece. It's too short even to fit around the smaller blocks, so it is just sewn with a needle when you've finished. So I numbered the fans 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we need to find a way of getting up to bring 7, 8 and 9 down to the bottom. So the first thing that we need to do is to work out where we're going to cut our pricking, and we need it to match. So we need a section that is going to match. So ideally I put that on my lace before I start. I then need somewhere in the middle to cut it, and that could be anywhere, but I need to make sure that I've got enough lace on that section of the pattern that nothing's going to pull. So to just do one on there, so to finish it there, actually wouldn't be a great idea. That one will always be a perfect match. I never go straight across. I always put a little indent in it because then it matches itself. Top and bottom, we're going to have a bit more work to do that. So let me show you myself doing some of that. So first thing I'm going to do is top and bottom, I'm going to take a ruler and I'm going to go through, draw a line through the bottom of the fan right the way across. Well, it's actually the top of the fan. So right across to the foot side, to the fan on that side, put my pencil against it, and I'm using a propelling pencil. Check it's right, and then put a faint line across. Okay, and then I'm going to repeat that at the bottom. And this is just to give us a guide when we're ready of where that marker is going to be. And then I'm going to put a little mark there and a little mark there. Okay, so let me go to my pricking. So for today I've got a pricking that's just the paper and the blue sticky on top of it. So this is my pricking. Pretend it is fully pricked. It's not. I've only pricked actually along the line where the joins are going to be top and bottom. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut through the dots, and that's the reason that I've pricked this line, because then I can feel myself as I'm cutting through those actual dots. I know you probably can't see me cutting through the dots, but that's what I've actually done. So I might be very off my line, but that's okay. We're going to sort that out shortly, and I'm going to do the same over the other side. Okay, so there I am. My ends are chopped off, and they should more or less match. They might not quite, but I'll talk to you about that. So my marker, which isn't on this one, was at roughly 3 in. So let me cut across, and I don't have to be accurate where I'm cutting here. I will try and go in roughly the same position. Okay. So if I now place those, what I can see when I come to match and put those both together on the pillow is that they will always very easily match because of the cutting out that I've done. What we now need to do is as similar as we can here. And this is where we're going to have to literally cut back some bits. So I can see when I look at this that there's a bit more on there, and I do tend to chop the edges off. So let's see whether I can chop, just shave a small amount off that pricking, and you can see it really is a minuscule amount. And then I'm checking, is it actually going to join up? And does it look like it's lined up? Well, actually, that works quite well. I am going to, just to make sure, cut a little bit more out of there and a little bit more out of there. With the card in there, if they overlap, then it's a problem. So You'll have to manually do that each time, but that actually is quite a good fit. It does feel like I've gone through the holes. So we then go ahead and use that as our pattern. And when you get to see it on my actual pillow, you'll see what I've done. But literally, you'd work through that set. Sorry, we'd start there, wouldn't we? So literally, you would start off on this section. You would work along that. You would carry on doing that. You might have to shuffle your blocks up and down your pillow. When you'd got fully onto that one and you're running out of pricking, you then need to undo your pins from that section, remove the section, push the block up, and then as accurately as you can, join the two together. It helps that I've actually got some vertical lines in the honeycomb here in terms of joining it together, because they're quite good to look to match up and to match up accurately. So that's how we would use a pieced pattern. So if you were, say, making a garter, you wouldn't have to prick 26 inches or however long you were doing your garter. You just have two small sections of it, and you'd rotate your pricking constantly around. So when you've done that, move up, put the next section on. When you finish that, move up your pillow and put the next, match the section up again. And that one is going to be harder to match up, as you can see. I'm taking a bit more time doing that. Before block pillows were common, what you actually had to do was you'd have a really long length of pricking, but then you'd run out of pillow. So what you tended to have to do was to take all the pins out of the lace, bunch the bobbins up, take the weight off them, and physically move the lace up your pillow and repin. Now you can imagine how difficult that is to do. That a block pillow just makes everything so much easier, that most people now don't meet that skill of parceling everything up and moving everything up your pillow. So let's next look at the lace and the working diagram before I actually start working it. So this is our lace and the working diagram alongside it. So one thing to note is that actually I have actually started on the straight, more or less, and I've not done that on any of the other patterns. This pattern has a different flow of order of working to other patterns that we've done, which is partly dictated by this trail and this zigzag of honeycomb as a result of the trail. That means that our start is slightly different. We are going to sew it just with over our hand. So I have had to do it so that actually there are a couple of pins at the bottom that I can use that repeat. So that's slightly unusual. But it also means that I've got a slightly unusual start where I'm not doing full stitches. So I'm going to start my work over at this section. Okay, so I'll do this whole section first. So we've got roseground. We've seen roseground. We've seen its foundation stitches. However, you'll notice I haven't done the foundation stitches at the very start there. That's because I'm going to be joining in on those pins. So actually, I don't need the foundation stitch there. I'll just use probably those pinholes, which are the centerline pinholes, to do my working. So you'll be fine with a roseground. That's the only roseground in the pattern that doesn't have all the foundation stitches, except the one at the very end when we won't do the closing foundations, because again they'll be into mid air. So that one's fine. That one's fine. They're rosegrounds that we've met. But to be able to work this one, we need to do things slightly differently. So this roseground is a half roseground. So when I come to the video, I will talk through this and the footside, which is different to the last pattern, in more detail to show you exactly how to do that. So we went move then to the trail. So the trail is exactly as we've worked chevrons and that before, except we've started off at a straight point, and we've started off with a coloured worker and everything along the row. So I'll show you how to start that, but then after that it's just normal. So then we get onto this area of honeycomb. Now this area of honeycomb is worked in a brown stitch. So a brown cross is half stitch and an extra twist, pin, half and an extra twist. It does mean that the holes are slightly different. The lace does hold differently. One thing to note, as always, I've not put extra twists showing on here. We've never met this before, but this ground, because it's half stitch and a twist, so half stitch has one twist, we're adding on an extra twist. We need to make sure that the pairs coming in match in terms of twists. It's not been something I've had to tell you before because everything's just had one twist on it. So those coming out will all have two twists on them, and it's the ground that's king in terms of the twists. So we will then work that section. As always, I'll explain it in more detail on the pillow. And then we get onto this fan. Now this fan is very hungry on thread. You can see it worked here. I've just worked it in cloth stitch with a cloth and twist edge. You can work it all in cloth stitch and twist. And that's possibly how you'd normally see it. I did think about that on this pattern, and to have a thicker worker, which I particularly like, having a thicker worker on this fan. But you're going to need a lot of thread for this fan, because you come backwards and forwards. And the thing to note is that these passive pairs at that point are going across your pillow, okay, not down your pillow like they have. So you may want to, as you're working, turn your pillow so that it feels like it's going down. And that's a lot easier then to get the pairs to feel like they're going in the right place. Back for then a centre row. And I did find that twisting these in between does make a difference. And then the second half, which again I will twist my pillow to do. Okay, so coming out of those fans, the pairs aren't initially held. We're going into honeycomb. Honeycomb has two twists, so all the pairs that are coming out of the fan will need two twists on it. So next time you see my screen, I will be at my pillow ready to start the work. So my working diagram, as always, is going to be at the side of my lace while I'm working. I may at times end up covering bits of it up with bobbins, but I'll try not to. So as I said in the brief intro, we're going to start off with this roseground here, but we're not going to have any foundation stitches. So roseground starts off with 4 pairs. So let me put 4 pins in. 1, so they're just above the work. 2, 3, 4. Okay, doesn't matter that they're all over the place at the moment. So I need to find the equivalent of that point. So it's that roseground there that I'm going to be working. So I'm going to work my 4 roseground pins as normal. So half stitch, and it's that one, pin, half stitch, and slowly and carefully release. Okay, half, pin, half. Okay, and again, pin 3, half, pin, half, and then centre pairs, half, pin, half. Okay, so we've done the 4 pins, and then at the end we've got our foundation stitches. So cloth stitch and twist, cloth stitch and twist. Okay, I'm going to cut the video just here while I lengthen my bobbins. I don't think I've said this before on a video. So one of the reasons for lengthening your bobbins is actually, so their bobbins actually sit better on your pillow. If you're up there, you can't have as many bobbins around as you can if you're further down your pillow. So I'm going to move those to one side. Okay, so I'm now going to have to work that pinhole. So this is our half roseground. So we're going to work that pin first, and then that's as far as we can go initially. So 2 pins above. So when I've looked at this and working this, I've just realised that actually what I should have done is put the extra pin that's above to match that one. On the working diagram that comes with the pricking, that will be corrected so that it is there. So just like that one, I'm going to do that pinhole, and then I'm going to do that. So I need 3 above, not the 2 that I had. So let me add 3 pairs. And these pairs won't, none of them are going to need a huge amount of thread on them. I do about an arm length on each of the white ones. The coloured ones are a totally different matter. Okay, so centre first, so we're going to do the equivalent of that one. Actually, it's not that one, it's that one, but the same principle applies. So it's half stitch, pin, half stitch, half, pin, half, and then I could have released them part way through. I can release them now. Okay, so once again, let me just lengthen. Okay, so at this point we've got a pair coming from the lace, which will come from the pin that's not shown there. So that's this one. We then need a foot side passive, and it's a single one, and you'll notice that this is in red. So this is always worked through in cloth stitch and twist. And then we've got a pair to bring in for our foot side edge. So we're going to need another 2 pins on the work. Our foot side is a different colour. So that's a red. And the red here can be a relatively short length. It can be the same as these sort of an arm length on each bobbin. It will be more than enough. And you're not going to have to use this as a bank or replace it. You're not going to have to put an extra twist in to turn it to a worker at any point, because it's the only coloured one around. So I've got these 2 pair pins sitting here. I'm going to work through that in cloth stitch and twist. Now I'm also going to do a slightly different edge here. Last time I twisted everything once. This time my choice is partly because I haven't got a second passive, but also because I want to make those holes more defined, because I'm going to have to sew through them. I'm going to put an extra twist on. So my edge is going to be cloth stitch and then 2 twists, or cloth stitch and twist with 1 extra twist, depending on how you want to think about it. I'm going to put that one in there. I'm not going to take the temporary pins out just at this point. I'll do that in a minute. So I'm then going to cover in cloth stitch and twist, so the red stitch, and then I'm going to do the last pin of the roseground, which has only got 3 in, which is half stitch, pin, half stitch with the foundation. Okay, so what I'm now going to do is I'm going to take this pin out, and I'm going to take it out quite carefully, and actually I'm going to put an extra pin in the work just to hold it so that my edge doesn't collapse there. But that's ready now to work the next roseground in that section. So I'm now ready to work this half roseground. So I'm now ready to work the last pin of the roseground and get ready for the next. So from that half stitch pin, half stitch, I go through the footside passive in cloth stitch and twist. I've chosen to add another twist. I work cloth stitch and twist with an extra twist, pin after 4, pin inside 4, take the inner pair back through the passive, and then it's set up for the next piece. So let me do that. So I'm going to work through the footside passive in cloth stitch and twist. I'm going to twist once more. I'm going to do cloth stitch and twist and one extra on the edge. And then I'm going to put my pin in inside 4. I'm going to slope that pin out very slightly. I'm going to maneuver that up to get attention on it, and then I'm going to cover the pin by doing a cloth stitch and twist with the red one. Okay, so you can see I'm having to pull quite hard on the red one, so I'm going to release that and I'm going to do what I did on the other one if I can. So I'm going to put my pin through the work just to hold that in place so that it doesn't pull the work out of shape too much. Okay, so I'm going to go and repeat those two off camera, and then I'll talk to you about the trail. One thing I forgot to mention on my roseground is that actually I've used a pattern marking here that most people probably wouldn't use. I have marked these as half roseground with a half diamond, or as near a half diamond as the software would let me create. So now let me move across to the trail. So I will need quite a few of these pairs for the trail. Okay, so our trail is started straight. It started off with our worker on a pin, which is that pin there. Okay, so I'm going to add that one, and then I'm going to add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pins. Sorry, 5 pairs on a single pin. So we've not done that before, but I'll explain why when we get to it. So I'm going to use that pin and then a pin above the work. So first our worker pair. Now I've put 3 arm lengths of thread. So I've done a wingspan, tip to tip, and then a bit more. And that should hopefully be enough to get you through the 9 repeats. So I'm then going to start hanging on this pin above the work. See that I'm going to have to lengthen as I go. And I'm going to hang those bobbins side by side. So I need 5 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1 more to make 5. Now I've been very careful when I've placed these. They are all in order, and that will become clear as to why they're in order from the bit that I'm going to do next. It makes sense for them not to be in pairs like in previous pieces, because they will naturally, when they're in work, come singly. So I start working my trail, and there's nothing fancy about working the trail. It's cloth stitch trail with 2 twists on the inside. Just watch your pattern markings for the trail. So the first pin is over here. I'm going to use that pin, and then I'm going to come back. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm not going to work through that last one because the working diagram shows that at every one we've got a pair left out, and we're going to take in at every one, so twist twice. Okay, so I'm now going to take this pin out. So I'm now going to take this pin out, but I'm going to keep the loops on the pin. So I'm taking it out very carefully, and I'm slowly going to pull my work of passage down. So I'm being careful not to lose any. They're all staying. They're staying in order. Okay, so that is now our pairs added on that pin. We just need to be careful of that pin. Let me move it there. So that we don't lose it, certainly initially. And that's it. I've put that pin in where it is, so that the pairs lie more naturally than they did on the pin at the top, but I don't over tighten the loop. So we're not going to sew into those loops, which we sometimes might have to do, but our work doesn't pull down by the worker. So let me work another row. Lengthen into the length that I need as I go. There was no point while they were on that temporary pin. Bring in one more pair, twist twice, pin in. Okay, and then work back. So you can see them moving along the pin, the loops vary slightly as I go. Okay, so that is our trail now set up. I'm going to carry on the trail off camera to this pinhole here. Okay, then I'll talk you through the honeycomb. So the next section I'm going to work is this honeycomb section, but first let's just return to the section that I've just worked. So one thing I've done is I've pushed that pin well out of the way so that I've got a clear run when I come to these bobbins without a pin getting caught in it. We can leave that pin in till the very end of the lace if we want. Same with the other two that I moved. So honeycomb is a bit strange because it's a 2 twisted ground, and the pairsal tension slightly strange. So we have a continuous row that we work, and I work that down the pillow. We've then got this gap row to work, where we've got a gap in between, so it doesn't continue down the row. Now I actually strangely work that up the pillow, and that encourages me that something is different. So I'll sort of do the same thing here as well. So the ground has 2 twists on, so the pairs coming out of the trail should have 2 twists on. 2, 2, 2, 2. Okay, so we're just going to start just a little bit above where we need to be. Move those over there and hang some temporary pins in. So I'm going to start off by working that pin. Sorry, I'm going to start off by working that pin, which is there. So I'm going to hang 2 pairs on separately, and hanging them on separately means I do get the proper stitch and the effect of the stitch. If I hung them rainbow, I wouldn't get the full effect of the stitch. So it's half stitch and an extra twist. That's what a brown cross represents. Pin, half, and an extra twist. So pin out, and what you'll find is when you let the pin out, it doesn't quite let out in normal. It feels different when you tension it. Don't worry that they're still moving. Right, we're going to then add on the next pin. For the next pin, we're going to add another temporary pin. So we're going to add a pin to do that, and then we'll be able to complete that row. Temporary pin added, half stitch and an extra twist, pin, half and an extra twist, and then remove that temporary pin. Okay, so my actual ones in work are very slightly longer, so let me just lengthen these at this point. Okay, so now I'm going to work along the row, and once I got to the end of the row, I'll then show you how it tensions. Half stitch and an extra twist, pin, half and an extra twist, half and an extra twist, pin, half and an extra twist, half extra twist, pin, half and an extra twist, half extra twist, pin, half extra twist, half extra twist, half extra twist, and finally half extra twist, pin, half extra twist. Okay, so if I pull one in the middle, you can see how one tightens it and one loosens it up, and the holes are bigger than we're used to. We're used to nice compact holes that don't open up, but these do, and sometimes pulling opens up the one before. It will sort itself out. So we're now going to work this gap row, which is this row. Now, there's an error on my pricking, which I've corrected on future ones. I've missed a line out. You don't always get the lines on there, but certainly as a beginner, you the lines will help you work, because each line will have a pair travelling down it. So let me work that gap row, and let me work up the pillow. The pairs are not connected other than at that pin. So half stitch and an extra twist, pin, half stitch and an extra twist, move both of them out the way, next two along, half stitch, extra twist, pin, half extra twist, move out the way, next two, half extra twist, pin, half extra twist. Okay, and then one final one, half extra twist, pin, half extra twist. Okay, so that was our gap row, and you can see why I worked from the bottom to the top, because the pins aren't connected, but I didn't have to push everything out of the way, come back to the top, work down, push everything out of the way again to get me back to the top. So it's a bit more efficient sometimes to work the gap row going upwards. Okay, so I've now got a couple more to start off. So I need to put that pin in and that pin, and then I'll be able to do that row. So let me hang two pairs on temporary pins above the work. And work half stitch and an extra twist, pin, half extra twist, release the temporary pins. 1, 2. Okay, let me lengthen so that they're similar. And then I've got one more to add on the outside. half and an extra twist, pin, half, extra twist, release, and down. Okay, so we're now ready. We've got everything to work that full continuous row down to that point there. So let me do that on camera. Half stitch, extra twist, pin, extra twist, half, extra twist, oh, I just noticed I put that pin in the wrong place. That should have been in that pinhole there. Half stitch, pin, an extra twist, pin, half, and an extra twist, half, extra twist, pin, half, extra twist, half, extra twist, pin, half, extra twist. Don't be afraid that it is, as we're going, it is pulling on earlier rows. Extra twist. That's perfectly natural. It's all part of the tensioning of the stitch. It will settle down. Okay, nearly there. Okay, so that is now done. I don't do a gap row because there'd only be one pin to work, so I'll work that when I come back to it. So the last thing that we've got to work is our fan. And our fan is going to be worked with an edge of cloth and twist. The rest will be cloth stitch, except for these here where we're going to put a twist as we transition between the two. So my coloured pairs for my outside passive, because I am doing them in colour, I'm actually going to start these both off on the pin. In terms of how much thread I've got on each bobbin, I've got again 3 arm lengths on each bobbin. However, that is unlikely to be enough. This really is greedy on the thread. So I've added these 2 on, and I've added them on rainbow style at the top pin, and I'm going to twist twice. So there's 2 twists between them, covering cloth stitch and twist. Okay, so then I'm going to work through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pairs that are hanging. We won't work through the last one that's there in cloth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, you can see that I'm moving those across. Twist twice, pin it. So now I'm going to come back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now what you can see has happened is on my first time it was quite easy to get those to line up more or less where they are on the working diagram and where I want them to be. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to twist my pillow. Okay, so now they're going to be, once I've got the edge done, they'll be more in a natural position for the lace and to come out. So twist my worker once, cloth stitch and twist, extra twist, pin in. Come back, cloth stitch and twist. The first fan, I'm just lengthening the pairs because I need a bit more as I go. So I don't work the last pair from last time. I'm going to leave one out. Twist twice, pin in. Cover. And next time I'm going to leave that one out. Pin in. Okay, so I'm going to carry on in this way until I get on my working diagram to that point. And so I'm going to speed up the video to that point. Okay, so back to normal speed. So as I said, the pairs that have been left out, and that one isn't left out, that's just been worked through, going to be worked through normally. I'm going to put one twist on them. We're then going to incorporate the final pair from the honeycomb, and that's already got 2 twists on it. So let's come back along this row. So cloth and twist through one. First one needs a twist on it. Next one needs a twist. Twist, twist, and cloth stitch, and cloth stitch. End of the row, twist twice, put the pin in. And go back to the side again and cloth stitch. As I work this section, I'm going to leave effectively one pair to transition to below. The pairs transitioning all need the appropriate numbers of twists. So this one is going into honeycomb, so it needs 2. The next one needs 1, 1, 1, 1. And this one has never been left out, so that's fine. Leave it as it was. Twist twice at the end of the row and put the pin in. So we're now going to do the reverse of what we did on the first half. So that means rather than leaving pairs out, we will be taking them in. So let me show you that. So the first one, we just have that as normal. And that does follow what's on our working diagram. Pairs almost transition vertically. So I've twisted my pillow again so that I can work in the best direction for the threads where they're naturally going to go. You will find you constantly need to let your worker out. So I'm bringing in one more pair. Twist twice, put the pin in. Go back. And try where you can to follow the curve. That will be particularly important when you work this fan in all cloth stitch and twist, which isn't part of this pattern. When you do that cloth stitch and twist, you cannot manipulate it other than the odd row back. So you need to get into the habit of working your stitches and getting them to sit where they want to in this pattern. That needs a twist. Twist twice. End of a row. Pin in. And come back. pin in. Okay, so I'm going to work the rest of this fan at speed. So all my pears are now in the lace, and you can see by twisting my pillow, I have ended up with those that are coming out of the fan, roughly following the path that I need them to going forward. They're not pulled up towards the end or anything like that. Those that are coming out do all need 2 twists on them. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 2. And they will now work a long row of honeycomb ground, and then they'll work a gap row of honeycomb ground. Then they'll work a long row. So this pattern does have a different flow to all the others that we've worked. We will start off working what will be a triangle of rose ground with the half rose grounds. We'll then work, we're starting off at this side, we'll then work that section of a trail. We'll then go back and we'll work the honeycomb. We'll then work the fan. We'll then work the next section of honeycomb. We'll then work the next section of trail, and then we're back to working that. So whereas we've been able in the past to work almost diagonally, we now can't do that anymore on this pattern. And this pattern is quite good at letting you section the pattern off. So I'm going to carry on working right down to my 9 fans at the edge. As I need to, I will move my pricking and I will talk you through finishing off at the very end of the video. So I'm now at the end of the lace, and we're not joining this properly end to end. We are just making sure there's a couple of bits overlap that we can then do a sewing with a needle across the row. So I have tried to leave a little bit of an overlap of 1 or 2 pinholes on each element, which will then allow me the bits to be able to join at. And all I'm going to do with all of these is literally reef knot them. And just for now, leave them all at one side. So I'm going to carry that on across the row. And when you come back to the video, I will have knotted across the row. So just when I've got to the last pin, I am going to work 1 more stitch there just to finish that off strongly so that it doesn't undo. But then again, I'm just going to reef knot them. Okay, so my pears are along the bottom of my pillow. You can see I've left 1 outside and I've lengthened that one. What it'd be really useful to do is to have a thread I can sew across the row. So I'm going to leave that one long so that I've got 1. On my first half, I forgot to leave a particularly long one. If you do the same one, do the same thing, then just use another thread later on. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to cut these initially long. Okay, so they're off the pillow. Very satisfying taking them all off. And then carefully, I'm going to go along the row and I'm going to cut them close, not cutting off any of the knots. This is fine. It's going to be hidden. And it's also going to be stiffened. So just remember when you get to the end, don't cut that last thread off. Okay, so all off the pillow. So I'm just going to bring in the other section of the lace to lie side by side. And I said these are going to sit together. They don't at that point. However, if I move it down half a fan, you can see how they start to feel like they knit together. And what we will do is we will go to the center of the fans and put a piece of ribbon and so on along. So we'll have a zigzag in piece of ribbon between the two parts of the lace. So here is my finished piece of lace. I'm going to fold it end to end, and I'm going to put the knotted ends underneath my work. So then I'm going to match as close as I can. So I can match quite easily on the rose grounds. I can see the 4 pins on the rose ground, and then all I'm going to do is I'm going to sew across that row. I've got a tapestry needle as my needle for this, just because it's more likely not to split threads. So literally, I'm going to very carefully sew across the lace. Okay, I might have to go do a bit of back stitching as I'm doing it. I'm not going to pull too tight, but I do just want to go across the row. Okay, so that's the first bit done. Let me go to the next one. Okay, so they're over each other, so that's fine. Through those 2 pinholes, and I'm going to go through that again from the top, just to hold it. Be careful trying to not catch anything else. You can see it is a bit fiddly to do, but not as fiddly as sewing end to end. So I'm then going to carry on to next point along, which is around there. So you can see it doesn't have to be too accurate. Yes, at the pins it does, but here I'm literally just going to do some ins and outs across the work to get me across. Try not to catch. There, up to that pin, through that, and then down to the shared pins that I've got. Okay, through that. I did really leave myself too short a length of thread to do this sewing with. Hopefully you'll have watched the video where I leave a much longer length of thread on the second one, that half that I make. You can see I'm just joining the two together. So then through that, these 2 loops are going to be the same. Then back down through those 2 that are the same. Through again, and then looking for that final pinhole that's the same. So there's one on that side, starting side, and there should be one at the end around there. Okay. So let's just secure that with a knot. can see it's a bit of a rough join, but it's good enough for what we're gonna use it for. Okay, so I can now cut that thread off. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a new thread on, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that thread to go up and down the pinholes on the foot side in turn. So you can see what I've done with my needle there, under and over. I need a decent length of thread to do this with, because I'm going to gather that. So let me do that off camera and then come back to show you it gathering. Okay, so I've gathered my lace along the foot side. To do that, you could use the contrast thread, you could use the red, or I've used the white of the lace, and I'm then going to draw that together. Okay, you can see it's drawn together relatively tightly. Okay, so now I'm going to put a reef knot in that, which will tension it a bit more. I'll probably do a triple reef knot, I think. Knot it 3 times. Okay, so it still doesn't quite look like a hemisphere, but that's fine. It will do in a minute. So I'm going to leave those ends quite long for now, just in case anything goes wrong or I need to hold on to them. So what I'm now going to do is I'm now going to get some PVA glue, and I'm going to water that PVA glue down about 2 to 1. Sorry, a 1 to 1. Mix them up, and then I'm going to stretch this over an apple that's covered in cling film, so that you can still eat the apple afterwards if you want. And then I will spread the PVA glue on. I recommend that not only cling film, but you use plastic gloves, PVCA gloves over your hands, because then you can hold this while it's sticky. So next time you see this, I will be in my kitchen, and you'll see me playing about with stiffening. So I'm set up with some PVA gloves on, because if I start handling this with glue on it, you can see I'm going to get covered in it. I've also got 2 implements to use. So I've got a glue spreader and I've got a paintbrush, and I'll work out which one is best for me. So I've got some watered down PVA glue in here. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to put it on the lace. Okay. So the spreader does seem a bit easier. I've got my apple in cling film over a glass to hold it. And I'm just going to go all the way around. You can see it is messy. It is a good thing to wear gloves. Turn around. Carry on around. Don't worry about the little bit of thread that you've got left. It's still going to be there. Let's try the paintbrush to see how that feels for me. That feels like actually it spreads it a bit more than the spreader does. I can get it to stick. I am going to rub off excess glue. Well, dab off excess glue. So I'm going to go all the way around. I can see that I've gone more than halfway already, but let's just put a little bit more on to make sure. We do want it to be stiff. It's not going to have anything in the middle of it. So we do want to make sure that it's going to hold for us. You do see it change very slightly colour as it soaks in. Just make sure that you've got enough in at the top as well, because you do want it to hold its shape. Okay, little bits. Okay, so what I'm now going to do is I'm now going to use my hands on it to spread it and to stretch it out. And you can see that does make quite a bit of a difference. It holds, it feels much better having done that. So I'm now going to take my gloves off. And I'm then going to take a piece of kitchen towel and I'm going to dab. Okay. It's done once. Fold it over and do it again. Okay, so I'm getting some of the excess off. Some will have spread into the fabric, into the lace, and that's fine. So I'm now going to leave this to dry so that it's solid. I will then do this exactly the same with the other half of the lace. I will use the same apple. In my case, could use an orange. You just don't want it too big. You can see roughly the size of the apple compared with the lace here. And when it's solid, I can then take it off. And that's probably easier. If it doesn't pop straight off, take the cling film off the apple and then it will release it. So I'm going to do, obviously, the other one when my lace is finished and fully set and off the pillow. And then I'll come back and show you the two halves that I'm going to join. So both halves of my bauble are now complete, and let me show you them as they will ultimately sit together. So they will ultimately sit with the fans opposite each other. It all feels a bit strange at the moment because I've not got anything to hold them, but that will come. So first of all, looking at the tops, well, sorry, looking at the centre of each section. That one's not pulled quite as tight as this one. So the first thing I need to do is I need to add a hanger. So to add my hanger, I put one needle with ribbon on through and then put another needle with ribbon through and try then to untwist as much as I can. I need to make sure I leave a decent size loop. Take the needles off. So one of them is twisted. This bottom one, it feels, has been twisted. Okay, and one more, I think. Okay, so that now doesn't feel twisted on top. But what we do need to do is we need to add a decent sized knot at the bottom. So I've just done an overhand knot. I've done one, and that may pull through. So let me try again and put a second. Sorry, let me put a second knot on there at roughly the same point to hold it, making sure I don't lose the loop at the top. So I'm going to use my needle to help me to get that knot over the first one. Okay, so that's now quite a big knot. I'm going to do one more. Again, over the existing knot. So another reason to keep your lengths long if you can. What I'm trying to do here is to stop it pulling through. Okay, and over. Okay, and finally once more. I'm just looking at the size of the knot when I'm doing this to see whether I need to do it again or not. That now has given me, if you can see, quite a chunky knot that isn't going to pull through. Okay, so there's my hanger. Perhaps a bit longer than I wanted it to be, but that's fine. I can cope with that. And now to stop it coming out the other end, to hold it in place, I'm going to put another knot in. So to help position it, I'm going to use my needle in. Okay, so we now have a knot below. It's a chunky knot and a much smaller knot on the top that's going to hold that in place. So what I can do on the inside is I can cut my thread ends across. If you've got a thread burner, by all means burn those ends off if you want to. So I'm now going to look at joining the two together. So first of all, I now no longer need that thread. That's now fine to cut off. It was just a safety measure in case I needed it with knotting. But you can see how much tighter I managed to get that one to that one. So I'm now going to go back to my ribbon, and I want a length of ribbon. Oops. And I'm going to thread one of my needles. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up. I'm going to use this point, the end of the fan, at each junction. So that's my first one. And I'm going to go up and through. Okay. And I'm going to go up and through. Okay, so what I need to try and do as I'm doing this is take off any twists that are appearing. So that's got a twist on it. That hasn't. So next one along, up and through, and I'm going to remove the twists. Up, sorry, that was down. Up and through, and remove the twists. Up, through, no twists. So you can see I'm working my way around. Up, some twists there, so quickly untwist those. Up and through, untwisting as I go. It's got a twist on it, so untwist it. Up and through. Got a twist on it. Up and through. You can see that it is just a bit like sewing the two sections together. Up and through. And it's relatively easy as you're doing to untwist. Up and through and untwist. Up and through. You can see how now it is looking much more like a ball. Now the next one's a bit more difficult because that's my joining one, but it's fine. It's still done exactly what I wanted to do. Okay. Up and through. Up and through. And untwist. That was a joining one. Untwist. Okay, so that is now our ball joined. So all I'm going to do now is cut my ends long. I'm then going to manipulate the thread ends so that they fit a bit better. And then I'm going to tie a bow. So let me play with it off camera, and then I'll come back to do the final bit on camera. Okay, so I've now got my ball as tight as I can at this stage. So I'm just now going to do a little bow in there to give it some ends. So let's make that bow a bit smaller. And when I'm happy with my bow, I can cut the ends. So at the moment it is a slightly misshapen bauble, but in time it will start to pull down. It depends on the shape of what you formed around as to how round it was. Mine didn't go all the way down. An orange might have given you a slightly different shape, but it's still a nice bauble, I think. So that's our bauble completed.